What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another video from the 10-7 MMA channel. And today's video is all about the Global Fighting League, the new organization for mixed martial arts that has recently been launched. They just had their first draft over the weekend. And I wanted to talk about this organization again, not to be a negative person, not to throw hate at somebody trying to do something new, but as a fan of the sport, somebody who loves mixed martial arts, and also somebody who really, I mean, this is the one sport that I watch. I used to watch basketball growing up. I've watched football occasionally. I do play fantasy football, but to me, mixed martial arts stands above and beyond anything else for a very good reason. That to me, it is just the truth. It is two men getting into a cage and seeing who's tougher, seeing who's more skilled, seeing who's more athletic. I mean, there's so many elements of it. And you're going in there pretty much by yourself. You have your coaches, you have your team, but at the end of the day, the final battle, the final showdown is a personal strength of a personal test of strength, of agility, of mental toughness. And that's why we love this sport so much. There's not all these other elements of, I think, like other people on your team that you need to rely on and you need support from at the end of the day, because the final competition is just one-on-one. And I think that's what makes this sport so special. And I think some of these components are lost in what GFL is trying to put together. And honestly, I think it's because they're, I don't know, maybe the people that are funding it or behind it or whatever, I just don't believe they're true mixed martial arts fans. I just don't. And I'm going to kind of go through in this entire video and explain why I think this whole operation is doomed to fail. Do I think something like this could exist and actually be successful? Yes, I do. But you have to be willing, in my opinion, to fully take a backseat to the UFC, to say, we're going to, for example, you look at Karate Combat or some of these organizations. They're similar but different. Bare knuckle fighting, great example, right? They're not trying to overtake the UFC. They're not trying to compete with them. It's an alternative to this, where it's still combat sports. Maybe you could even think about boxing. It's still combat sports that has a different market, but they're not trying to be a better version of the UFC. And there's a lot of reasons why I think that if the GFL, which I believe the GFL is trying to position themselves that way, it's just not that. And the proof is in the pudding when we kind of go through some of these points that I'm going to lay out. So anyways, I'm going to go through 5 points in this video explaining why I think the GFL is doomed to fail, and go through and let me know what you think in the comments if you agree or disagree. Make sure to click subscribe if you do like this video or like what you see on this channel. We'd love to have you, as we are growing and growing. So it's a lot of fun. All right, let's move on to point number 1. And by the way, we're going to play this video in a second when it's relevant. This is I can't remember the name of this gentleman, but I think I don't know if he's the CEO or he's one of the backers of the GFL, but he talks a little bit about the organization as well. But here's the first issue with the GFL. Now, again, if you were to position yourselves, if they were to position themselves as almost like a post-retirement league, right? So you have your guys in the UFC, they are being cut from the UFC, or they want to retire from the UFC, but they want to continue to compete. Bring them over here and we can see some of our favorite fighters still compete when they're no longer able to compete in the UFC. I could understand that a little bit better, because that really is what it is. If you look at the roster, it's a lot of it's pretty much the majority of the names that you recognize are former UFC athletes. And I think if they position themselves that way and we're not trying to whatsoever compete with the UFC, I think that could make a little bit more sense. I'm going to show you a press release later that I really do feel like hints at the fact that they are trying to be quote unquote better than the UFC. But if you take that position and you're not trying to compete, this makes a little bit more sense. But if you're trying to compete, it doesn't really make sense, because how are they promoting the brand? They're leveraging this fame built by the UFC. How does the UFC do it? Yes, the fighters are amazing. Yes, they're incredible. But again, they have an entire operation that they've developed and built and honed over the years that I'm sure costs a lot of money to promote these fighters, to build them into stars. Yes, Sean O'Malley is awesome. Yes, Conor McGregor is awesome. But the UFC built and created and presented this platform upon which they can build their fame and catapult their fame, which also builds the sport. So it's an entire machine. Now, if you're trying to compete with the UFC, yet all you're doing is you're kind of siphoning off this fame that they've built, it just doesn't make sense long term. Because let's say you do overtake the UFC in some alternate reality. Then what? Let's say the UFC goes out of business. Who's building the fame? You're going to have to now develop this entire marketing machine. Is that your plan? Are you planning to invest all that money to do so? I don't think so, based on a couple subsequent points that we're going to talk about later. So anyways, the fact that you're trying to compete with the UFC, yet you're just simply using what the UFC has built, I don't see how that is a sustainable business model. Okay, number two, they're doing something a little bit unique and different. Now, this has been tried with the IFL and with the PFL to some extent. They're turning it into a team sport. So they're I think creating 6 teams. I think they announced like one is in Los Angeles. Like they're putting them in homes in cities, and they're doing a draft. They just did a draft actually on Saturday. So certain fighters are going to different teams in different locations. Now, this whole idea of utilizing a team model, they give an explanation as to why they think it makes sense. Actually, let me play this clip, and you're going to hear the explanation in terms of why a team model is purportedly so great.
Just that, like, the number one driver in sports fandom, proven, is cheering for your favorite team. Favorite teams have never really existed in the sport of MMA. So we're just creating what already exists, and you see it across all the major professional leagues in the world. And this is just the implementation of that team-based league model for the third most popular sport in the world. And the fact that we have these popular athletes who people already are emotionally invested in, or know their name, or know their story and their background, I think that's going to be the difference maker with us. Is, we're going to have wild matchups that people wouldn't expect to see. But also, we're going to have the best global top prospects available and having them competing as well. So
therapy has always.
Oh, okay. So we got an ad there. Let's pause that. But here's the thing. Again, yeah, of course, you're leveraging once again the fame that was built by the UFC, and that is going to draw maybe some fans, some nostalgic fans. Like, I actually do want to see Tony Ferguson fight again. I want to see him win. I know some people say I'm sick for wanting to see him fight again, but I'm still a fan of his, and I only want to see him fight again because I want to see him win. I want to see him turn his streak around, and is that the best decision? I don't know. But anyways, I'm just saying, me personally, I would be interested to see him fight like a Dylan Dennis or somebody where I felt like he's heavily favored. Let's see him get a victory. But anyways, I digress. Now, he says the number one driver across the world is team sports, rooting for your team. To me, this is almost insulting in a way, because as a mixed martial arts fan, fine, you want to say it's a team sport, but the whole teams exist in other sports by necessity. Basketball is a team sport. Football is a team sport. That's the way the sport is structured. You need a team. How else are you going? And then how are you going to organize the players on their own? Are you going to come up with your boys growing up? You're going to build a team and go and fight? Like, there's too much that is required to build a well-functioning, well-oiled machine, well-oiled team, that for people to do it individually, it just doesn't make sense. That's what necessitated the creation of these teams and these franchises. But if you think, the thing that always bothered me about team sports, and I bet you a lot of MMA fans feel the same, is that it's all manufactured. It's all fake. If you think about it, you have like the Detroit Lions, and I'm from Michigan. Granted, I was rooting for Detroit to win. It's cool. We kind of get into the spirit. All my Michigan buddies are going for them, etc., whatever. But are these, I mean, is it really like the city of Detroit? It's a private business owner that has bought the team, bought the franchise. They're based in Detroit. And then they're not like taking all Detroit-based athletes. They're drafting athletes based on preset rules of how the draft is going to go. I mean, it's fake. It's not real. Mixed martial arts is the truth. It's real. It's raw. You have fighters from different backgrounds, and I don't need a manufactured fake team to get me on board with a fighter. I want to vibe with the fighter because I like their personality. I like their fighting style. I do. Maybe they come from the same place for real that I do. They're not just placed there by some artificial draft, right? Like, I think Tyron Woodley was drafted to the LA team. I live in LA now. Does that give me some artificial connection to him? I mean, you could say that, but I don't feel it. Like, I just want to see Tyron Woodley fight because I like Tyron Woodley, and I do like him. I'm a fan of his, but I just don't get it. Like, to me, it's like I said, it's kind of insulting. It feels like it's insulting my intelligence as an MMA fan to try and create this bond with a fighter over team. So anyways, to me, this is just a fail on the side of the GFL to create this, and it shows a disconnect with the sport and the fan base. Okay. That got me a little excited there because it just bothers me. Like, why you have to add the fake stuff? Just keep it real. Okay, let's move on to the next point. So now they're also touting this amazing rev share model. Let me have the same guy explain the rev share model. I'm going to tell you why I think it makes no sense. I think it's great if you can pull it off and if you can actually pay the fighters more. I'm all for it. Don't get me wrong. But I'm going to let him explain it, and then I'm going to give you my 2 cents.
Right.
And the economics,
Also, the revenue shares is I
right?
think are a game changer.
Okay, and so and that's 50%.
Correct. So whatever revenue we receive, whether it's media rights deals, sponsorships, ticket sales, all of that, 50% goes into the fighter revenue pool from that specific event. And then those fighters that are on that event are the ones who share in that revenue percentage. And obviously every fighter is not equal. So every negotiation is their base guaranteed pay. We also have a win increase. So we don't do the show win, half your money here, half your money there. It's hey, this is what you're getting, worst case scenario to show up and do your job. And if you're successful, the next time you show up, your pay increases. So your guarantee increases.
All of this in theory sounds fantastic. First of all, and I don't even know what the ticket sales are going to be, what the sponsorships are going to be. So is it 50% of nothing, 50% of a small amount, a nominal amount? I don't know. We'll find out. But first of all, why do I say this makes no sense? The reason why you're able to do this right now is one reason, again, going back to what are they doing? They're leveraging the fame from the UFC. So this means they don't have to spend a massive amount, or I believe they're trying to avoid spending a massive amount on marketing and advertising and whatnot, because they can use all these guys that have big followings, that have big social media presence, and then bolster the events that way. That's why they can even purportedly do this. Can they really do this? I mean, I don't even know, because we'll see. We'll see if they're still around in a year or 2 years or 3 years. But to me, it's not a long-term strategy unless you are resigned to say, hey, we're not a competitor with the UFC. Let's just be real. The UFC is the best. And by the way, there's all these other elements too that they have to compete with. They have to compete with the production level. They have to compete with all the amazing staff that the UFC has put together. Bruce Buffer, like, they have to get somebody like that. You know, all these little moving pieces have to fit together if they're really trying to compete. Now, if they're not, cool, I think they have a better shot at just saying, hey, we're going to be this post-UFC career path. Okay, there's a little bit more wiggle room. But now I'm going to go to my next point, which I do think they are trying to compete. And I think this is another problem. Point number 4, another reason why I think this is problematic. Let me show you this press release, and you judge for yourself. And maybe this might be where they're at right now. Maybe they will change directions or change their mindset at some point. But look, it says, with MMA's undeniable global popularity, the GFL is the natural progression of a sport that transcends borders. They're talking about being the wave of the future with mixed martial arts, and this is the direction it's going to go in. And we are that evolved form or format, I guess you could say, of the sport. By combining a team-based league model, so stupid, with a commitment to athlete equity, the GFL aims to help the MMA industry innovate and set a new gold standard in professional sports. I've said this time and again, and I'm very open to being proven wrong. If we ever dig deep into the books of the UFC, perhaps I'm wrong, but I've said this time and again. I just don't believe that the UFC is really, let's say, screwing over the fighters the way that some people like to put it. I think that if you look at the percentages that they pay out based, compared to other established sports like and organizations like the NFL, the NBA, I still believe and purport that the likely reason for that is because they have a lot more expenses that these other organizations don't have, because it's still a growing sport. They're still trying to expand globally, even domestically. And they're building things like not PFLs, what's it called? Performance institutes, PIs in different locations to, again, build better athletes, increase the sport. I imagine they're trying to get more programs across the globe for young kids to start training mixed martial arts, because that's going to turn them into mixed martial arts fans one day. I imagine all these little pieces cost money, and they're working on them because they're not trying to get a quick payday. I truly believe the staff there, and including Dana White, is trying to build the sport up. So once again, I'm just going back to this notion that I think the UFC, maybe they are paying out smaller percentages in total of of the sponsorships and whatnot. But the money's not just, I don't think it's just going into Dana White's pocket like some will have you believe. I do think they're spreading that around to the staff for the purpose of building the sport to make the paydays higher in the future for the fighters. Again, I won't die on that hill. I'm willing to be proven wrong, but that's what I think. And we shall see. But anyways, coming back to this, it still feels like to me they're trying to position themselves as the new wave of MMA, and it's just not to me. And so if you're going down that avenue of trying to be the bigger, better organization, trying to compete head on with the UFC with all these mistakes already at the starting point, I just think it's doomed for failure. Okay, my last point is really dealing with Brendan Schaub, and Brendan Schaub pretty much says it all. And I want to show you, I'm not even going to say too much. I'm just going to play the clip. Actually, I got two clips, which are pretty interesting. So first, this is Brendan Schaub talking about the GFL back in, when was this? Well, at least a month ago. Clip. Here we go.
I will never understand this. People that have been around the sport long enough know you've seen Affliction, you've seen IFL, you've seen Strike Force, you've seen Ryzen, you've seen all these leagues pop up, and none of them ever work out. They eventually all fade out. And I when I saw the GFL news, it was announced on Ariel's show. Shout out to Ariel. And what they're doing is it's a team concept, right? Which is IFL. Okay. And then they announce all these names on there, which is a whole nother issue, but they announce all these older names on there. I assume the funding and the money comes from this, from guys in whatever the tech space or hedge fund investors that don't know flying shit about mixed martial arts.
And right now he's hitting the nail on the head, exactly how I feel. I just don't understand how some of these ideas can pop in their heads if they're really longtime viewers and lovers of mixed martial arts. Maybe there's some people on the board of directors or within the staff that they are true fans of mixed martial arts. But I got to believe that I just don't believe that many of them are really true fans. They might be sports fans and they're trying to convert the sport into something that is not. But that's my take. I think Brendan's nailing it on the head.
They have no clue. They have no clue, and they're the ones that just keep losing their ass over the years, investing in these horrible organizations to compete with the UFC. The UFC is the UFC, dude. It's the NFL. It's the NBA. There's a reason there's no other leagues that can compete with the NFL. Rock tried his bullshit, but all it is a, hey, you like NFL? Well, why don't you check out, we're not going to do it the same season. We'll do it around it. A much watered down version of the product you love. It's never worked out for anybody, especially in fighting. Someone needs to get in their ear. I mean, the reason I like it is these fighters get paid. Cool, man. Get your money because they're not associated with the UFC anymore. There's really nowhere for guys to go anymore. There's really nowhere to go. So I like that. Hell yeah. These dumbass Silicon Valley or hedge fund investors want to get these fighters, my friends, paid. Fuck, do it, dude. Get your money, son. Hell yeah, I like that. But as far as a fan, as a business guy, dude, what the fuck are you guys doing?
Okay, so he says it all, and I think he nails it. It's great analysis. As if you don't know who Brendan Schaub is, he used to fight in the UFC. You probably know who he is if you're watching this channel. And I really appreciate that analysis. And then I'm not trying to throw shade at Brendan by any means, but this just shows you the position that the GFL is in. Brendan goes on, he says that, he lays it out perfectly. And then just look at this. This is the GFL draft last weekend. Who do they have commentating about the draft? It's Brendan Schaub. Now, again, this is not to throw shade at Brendan, but if you're the GFL, I mean, what does this say about the organization? Somebody just goes in and basically explains why you're going to fail. And then because I imagine, because who else? He's a big name that they can get to commentate on this draft, but that's the level of, I guess, desperation that you're in. I mean, listen to this.
You were involved in team sports, Brendan, forever. Colorado Buffaloes, Arena Football League. Now we have a team format. How will that make a difference?
Yeah, what I would do if I was one of these coaches, and we have high-level coaches, that I'd be looking for a leader in that locker room, a guy with a lot of experience, a guy that's fought at a world championship level, just to tutelage those younger guys, give them words of wisdom. That's going to start the tone of your team. You want a Tom Brady-ish type of leader in that locker room, a Tyron Woodley, something like that of that caliber. So you're going to want to pick those early because they can go off the board fast.
I mean, I just feel like that says it all, right? I just don't understand that. So to me, as an organization, if somebody's going to go on a tirade, I mean, I'd at least have them take the video down. But like, they're going to go on a tirade explaining why you're going to fail, and then you're so desperate to have somebody of note on your panel that you have that same person on there. Again, not like I love that Brendan said what he said on his channel, because I think it was honest, it was open, it was the truth. It is what it is. I mean, what does this say about the GFL? Then now they're having that same person commentate about the draft. I don't know. Another thing I want to say to close this video out, when we talk about the whole team element, dude, it just doesn't make any sense, because he also talks about it in the aerial interview that with these teams, they have a head coach for the team. So they'll have a coach in a facility, I think in LA or wherever your team is based. But so then what are you supposed to do? Are you you trained with a particular coach your entire career? So what, you move and now you have a new coach? Now he did say, to his credit, no, if you want to stay with your old coaching staff, you can. Or if you want to come to LA or wherever your team is based and work with the coaching staff for that one team, you can. But who's going to do that? How many we see how it goes with most fighters. Yes, sometimes they change teams or change coaches, but it's for very specific reasons. It's because maybe you want to go to Trevor Whitman, like Kamaru Usman did, to work on striking in particular, or retool a particular aspect of your game. It's not just because now my team is there and I'm going to go. That's not how mixed martial arts works. It's a very particular relationship. The whole thing makes no sense to me in terms of how it's structured and built. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, and we'll see what happens. Let me know if you guys agree in the comments. Anyways, not trying to crap on people trying to do interesting things, but it misses the mark. I'm sorry. As a mixed martial arts fan, it misses the mark, in my opinion. Let me know what you guys think. If you agree or disagree, make sure to click that like button if you did like this video. Make sure to click subscribe if you want to see more from the 10-7 MMA channel. Thank you guys so much for joining. We'll see you in the next video. Take it easy.